Molly.
Yep, you're live.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 21 Hats War Room. I'm your host, Lauren Feldman. My guests today are Ami Kassar, founder of Multifunding and arguably the preeminent expert on small business lending in the country, and Ari Weinswig, co-founder of a truly iconic American business, Zingerman's, which started as a college town deli and grew into a whole community of businesses. One of them, Zingtrain, teaches the Zingerman's approach to visioning, customer service, and open book management. I want to start with Ari, but first let me emphasize, we want to take questions here from those of you who have joined this conversation. So please feel free at any point to start shooting your questions into the chat box. We'll get to as many as we can. But let me start. Ari, tell me, how's it going? What's the current status of Zingerman's in Ann Arbor?
Well, I guess we're in a little bit of a status quo. I'd say the first week or two, starting in mid-March, everything sort of was changing by the day, if not by the hour. And we were just trying to keep up. I mean, the last month, I would say it's settled into a pattern, at least in terms of how things are operating. Just to give a quick synopsis, I mean, so we had 700 or so employees. We have furloughed, or 750, we furloughed about 250 within 4 or 5 days of everything shutting down in the middle of March. The status of our businesses, so we have 3 restaurants, the deli, Miss Kim, which is our little Korean restaurant, and Zingerman's Roadhouse, which is a pretty big restaurant that's all regional American food. Those are all doing carry out and delivery, which is accounting for ballpark 35–40% of normal sales. Our mail order is very busy. So we're actually increased sales there quite a bit. And what else? Our bakery is around 65%, let's say. We do wholesale, so selling to mail order into upscale supermarkets is helping there. Our creamery, wholesale, candy, and coffee somewhere in the middle. And then we have 3 businesses that have been hurt the hardest. Zingtrain, which you mentioned, which, all the seminars, public speaking, all of that's completely gone away, although they're working on getting some online offerings up starting next week. And then our food tours business clearly is completely zero. And then our Cornman Farms, which is our 1830s event space, renovated event space, about 15 minutes out of town, which does a ton of weddings, all that's completely gone away too. So we're doing a little bit of prepared foods from there. So all told, we're about 40% of normal, typical, whatever sales.
Wow. Did you apply for a PPP loan?
Yeah, they're all separate businesses with different, we have managing partners in each business. That's part of the way that we work. We operate as one organization with these semi-autonomous pieces within it. And so yeah, each of them has applied and each of them got the PPP loans.
Good for you. Did you apply for any other loans, like the disaster loans from the SBA?
The EIDL loans, yes, yeah. We did, but we haven't heard anything. We have
you're not alone.
Two of the 12 that applied got the 10,000, but no other communication, and none of the other ones have heard anything. Got it.
Ami Kassar, you've been very busy. You've been doing webinars, I think, just about every day. Your business helps small businesses figure out their financing options in normal times, and in these abnormal times, you've been working like crazy to spread the word and help people figure out what they can do to get these loans. And I want to talk about that, but before, tell me about your business. Tell me what has the impact of this been on Multifunding?
So for Multifunding, it's been like a business model and animated suspension for weeks. So we decided after some time and consideration to absolutely have no financial incentives in any PPP loans whatsoever. So we decided there was not a good and legitimate role for an intermediary that we are in in PPP loans or a role for it. We decided it was fairly simple. So we decided to take on the role of being an educator and a teacher and to really encourage people to do what we thought were the best things, which was to have a plan A, plan B, and C, and definitely line up with the local community bank. And I'm very glad we gave them the advice and suggestions that we did.
Did you follow that advice yourself?
I didn't get a PPP loan.
Did you not apply for it, or you?
I didn't apply.
And why is that?
I think that ultimately, not that I wanted this, that COVID-19 will make our business stronger, not weaker. So therefore, I felt I could not honestly sign the attestation that my business was being hurt by COVID-19.
Explain what you mean by that, because if I heard you right, you just told us that there isn't a profit-making role for you in helping businesses apply for PPP or the disaster loans. You're playing an educational role in that. Given that that's what everybody is focused on right now, why do you see COVID-19 ultimately making your business stronger?
Because, I mean, it's already starting with this Main Street lending program where we will be helping people through the process, which I think is a more complicated and a more of a traditional underwriting process than a PPP, which is a relatively simple loan to apply for. And I think that there will be a lot of businesses as a result of COVID-19 that are going to need to restructure their debt. And I think the PPP and the Main Street lending program are really the first generation of programs we're going to see. I think they're going to be new ones evolving and growing. And I just felt that, right or wrong, I'll be very surprised if Multifunding doesn't have a much better year this year than we did last year. And a lot of that will be the result of the crisis. And so therefore, I just felt in good faith I couldn't sign a PPP application.
Interesting. I want to get back to the Main Street lending program and have you explain exactly what that is and who it is appropriate for. But tell me a little bit more about your business. I hear you saying that you expect to have a strong year, but do you have revenue coming in right now? Have you had to do layoffs?
We haven't had to do layoffs. We've funnily and ironically had more expenses than revenue, but we have had some fee revenue for doing private webinars, private speaking engagements. We have done some private consulting for people who've wanted one-on-one time to be advised and learn about the PPP programs. But we decided to make the vast majority of our information available for free. And we wanted this to be a service to the community. And so we moved them to bi-weekly now, but for the first several weeks, we were doing daily webinars at noon. We had thousands of people on them each day. And our decision was that we felt it was our responsibility and in this crisis, to help serve as to educate to people and try teach them about the best strategies. And I think that will pay a long-term dividend for our company, but we decided not to try profit from it in the short term.
Were you at all surprised to hear Ari say that he has not heard anything from the SBA about his EIDL disaster loan?
No, EIDL is like a lottery ticket. Sadly, I wish there was more media focus about EIDL and all these big companies taking PPP, but EIDL, I think 3 or 4 weeks ago, over $400 billion, and I think it's now allocated to $60 billion. So I just keep telling people, if you get an EIDL, it's like winning a lottery. And I've heard people getting $1.2 million loan offers, $500,000 loan offers. My wife, for her small business, got $1,000 in her bank account yesterday. She was pleasantly surprised. So it's literally all over the place, and I can't figure out any rhyme, reason, or logic to how they are processing them or allocating them.
Why would you like to see the media focus more on those disaster loans? What part of that story isn't being told?
Well, I think that there's this outcry in the media now about the PPP money going to the bigger companies and not to the smaller companies. But at least in my opinion, the PPP wasn't designed to save companies, it's designed to save jobs. And the thrust of the PPP is to keep people off unemployment rolls and keep people and teams and companies in place so that hopefully if this lifts in 60 days, business can resume as normal and people's teams aren't decimated and the unemployment lines don't get just buried with applications. So I haven't seen any stories about this, but I'm super curious to know if Shake Shack, which returned their money, what did they do with all their employees the next day? Did they lay them all off? Or did they keep them with the liquidity? If they laid them all off, well, the government's now paying their unemployment instead of paying Shake Shack through the PPP program to keep them. So what difference does it really make? So PPP is, and I keep telling people, this is the Paycheck Protection Program. It's not the Entrepreneur Protection Program. This is not designed to save your company. It's designed to food on your employees' tables and to keep them having health insurance benefits and keep them not going hungry.
Well, that leads me right to a question that I want to ask Ari, because I think this is particularly tricky for restaurants. There's a clock that starts ticking as soon as you get a PPP loan. You have to use that money within 8 weeks, as I understand it, if you want the loan to be forgiven. But your restaurant may not be open. So are you better off paying your employees and starting the clock ticking, or holding on to the money? How have you managed that situation, Ari?
Well, I think the quick answer is nobody really knows. Not only that, but Ami probably knows better than me, but I mean, they're changing the rules while the clock is ticking. So it's a little bit like the basketball game started and they're still arguing over where the 3-point line is and how many timeouts you get. And they keep saying, we're not quite sure yet, or that might change or whatever. So, but everybody's in the same boat. I've been engaged with a group called Independent Restaurant Coalition, which people can look up online. And it's a whole host of, just really great people, a lot of whom I know already, and then and the rest I pretty much know of, all of whom run, very ethically grounded, locally based, restaurants or restaurant groups. And they're all trying to figure it out, and nobody has great answers. We're in a little bit better shape than some because we are actually open and doing about 1/3 of the business. But, to Ami's point, the intent seems like it was to keep everybody employed. So if you're in an office setting, it works really well. Like at Zingtrain, you can call back all the people who were furloughed. They can work from home and everything works wonderfully. But in the restaurant setting where you're trying to keep social distancing, not pack people into the space at the intensity they were packed in, and you're only doing 1/3 of the business, what do you do with the other 2/3 of it? And because your amount of forgiveness, which was the point of the loan, is inhibited significantly by your FTE count, which they haven't agreed on what an FTE is, but the less people you have working, the less you get, the less percentage of what you spend you get forgiven. If I said that in a coherent way, I don't know, but anyway, it's challenging.
Well,
I have a slightly, maybe whether I'm right or wrong.
Yeah, chime in. I don't claim to be right.
This is such a hot political potato, and I can pretty much, if I have a crystal ball, 3 years from now there'll be a couple hundred people in jail because of PPP fraud.
Mm-hmm. In terms of what?
And it doesn't matter if those people actually intentionally committed fraud or didn't, but I think that the government is going to have to audit bunches of people, and groups of businesses will go through miserable SBA audits for a long time and face a lot of issues.
Like what kind of things?
My opinion is that it doesn't really matter if you have work for your people to do or not. If you took the PPP money, even if they're sitting at home on their hands, you're responsible to rehire them and bring them back. And I think that there's a good chance as a mechanism for auditing this.
I mean, let me stop you there. Rehire them and bring them back? I mean, can't you?
Rehire them and let
if you
them
have a restaurant and your restaurant isn't open, you can't bring them back.
You just got the money with the intent of keeping your payroll. The intent in my opinion, and I know this will be subject to legal interpretation and future guidelines, and the guidance is unclear. So in my opinion, you follow the intent of the law. The intent of the law, the reason this program was constructed, the reason this money is being forgiven is the government wants employers to rehire their employees, even if they're sitting at home on their hands with nothing to do. This isn't your money. This isn't the employer's money. It's taxpayer money that is being forgiven in lieu of unemployment, in lieu of having them go on unemployment. And so I think what I've been advising people to do is bring them back, even if you got nothing for them to do. I think if you took the PPP money, you have a responsibility to bring them back. And I think that the government, there is a very good chance, will audit against unemployment filings. And if a company that took PPP money has a bunch of open unemployment filings against them that occurred during the window of time between February 15th and the time that they took the loan, that's going to head off an audit trail and create issues for those companies.
Huh. Well, I don't have any problem with paying people to stay home because I agree with you, but we're getting completely conflicting perspectives. So I haven't heard it from a legal vulnerability standpoint, but people are concerned about paying people to stay home while paying other people to actually work and how you balance the two. So if you have one person who's in the restaurant working and you have the other one making the same money to stay home, there's that issue. And then we're also running into problems with people because the unemployment stipend, when you're working with frontline people, and we pay better than many, but people can pick up the $600 stipend on unemployment plus the state unemployment, which puts them at above the rate that they make to work. So there's a lot of places where they're running into trouble around that too.
Have you had an issue with that where you've called people in who didn't want to come in?
Yeah. Well, and it's hard to argue because they're concerned about personal safety too.
But a counter argument to that, Ari, is, and it's not pointed at you, I've had hundreds of
No, I like what you're saying, but
over the last few days, is that you need to protect your company. Okay, and if a employee says, "I'm not coming back to work, I'd rather get left by unemployment," and you've offered them the job, even if the job is to sit at home and do nothing, but they'd rather get more on unemployment, they're not really unemployed anymore. You shouldn't be being pinged for an unemployment filing against them. And I think at that point you have a responsibility, especially to protect your company against legal liability, to call the unemployment office and say, pull that claim, I try to rehire them and they won't come back.
Okay, I'm going to put you on a call tomorrow with a couple of my partners.
And it's not, but people, there's a certain herd mentality about this, and it's just my point. It's called the Paycheck Protection Program for a reason.
Well, yeah, I'm not arguing. It's just the conflicting direction. We're just trying to do the right thing, and we're getting completely conflicting. I mean, what you're saying seems valid, and I'm not arguing. It's just trying to figure out the right thing to do, because we're also getting people saying we could be legally vulnerable if we hired people that we weren't using properly.
Ari, which way have you tended with the restaurant? Have you been paying people to stay home, or
we're not paying people to stay home? Although after I take Ami's direction back to the other people, maybe some of them will change their mind. But we're trying to figure out things that people can do in the building that are socially distanced. That are, real work. So adding, cleaning projects, costing projects, rewriting training that can be done from home, painting, stuff like that we can put two people in a room, a big room, so they're not sitting right next to each other, and try to do that. And I'm not disagreeing with what Ami's saying. I mean, I think we're all confused and trying to figure out.
I think I might be taking the most conservative approach of all of them. So sure, a lawyer or a CPA, if you read a lot of the language is vague.
Yeah, very.
And I'm sure there will be billions of dollars of legal fees made defending these claims and stuff. And a lot of it will eventually win. But
We've got a question actually from somebody you know, Jay Goltz, who owns
Jay.
businesses in Chicago. He points out that PPP is federal and unemployment is handled by the states, and he suspects that it will be hard for them to communicate with each other and look at who's getting one and who's getting the other, or who's getting both. Do you think he might be right about that?
I know of people who are trying to figure out inside the government how to do that right now.
Interesting.
I don't know if it's going to happen.
Right.
I don't have hundreds. I'm not pretending I know the bureaucracy, but I know that there are people thinking about that and trying to figure out how to calibrate those systems so that they can audit the stuff.
Do you think someone in Ari's position is at a risk if they sit on the money for now until they're ready to open back up and then start using it?
Yes.
And why would that be? That seems to me to be in the spirit of the law. The money will all go to
the law, in my opinion. The spirit of the law is to protect people's paychecks and to protect the unemployment programs from just blowing up because of demand on the system. And I think the intent of the law is to keep teams and businesses as intact as possible for these 2 months until hopefully the country can open again. And so I think that if you were to, that's the intent of it. They're not giving small businesses or entrepreneurs this money to play with it at their own rules. The primary purpose of this money is to get your people off unemployment and get them back on the payroll, even if they have nothing to do right now. That's my interpretation. I could be wrong, but I'm
glad I'm on the call.
Ari, you referred to a group of restaurant owners before, I believe, and I think if I know who you're referring to, and I think I do, they have lobbied for some changes to the guidelines, one of which is that the clock should start ticking when the business reopens, not when the money lands in your account. Ami Kassar, is there a chance that could still happen? Do you think there's any chance that the guidelines will continue to be revised?
I mean, anything's possible, but I don't think it's safe to count on it.
Right.
So
that's why we didn't. Yeah,
anything could change, and things keep changing. But I think when you took the money, in my opinion, from the minute that money hit your account, you took the responsibility to put it back. Now, this is not what Ari is doing. I've heard plans like you can't imagine. People who are laying off people and then putting their mother and their brother and the sister on their payroll during these 8 weeks.
That sounds problematic.
People who are trying to flip from cash to accrual. People who are trying to pay their bonuses during these 8-week periods so they can maximize their forgiveness period. The amount of schemes and not plots, but strategies to try and manipulate this money to the advantage of the entrepreneur, I've heard. It's crazy.
Let me ask you this, though. I think there's a line there somewhere. I've talked to people who said things like, I know a restaurant owner, you've scared me enough, I'm not going to mention his name, but he's doing a pretty good takeout business right now. And he's got revenues coming in. So he's sitting on the PPP money and waiting to decide what to do with it. He's even thinking he might use it to remodel his restaurant, and, with the knowledge that it will not be forgivable, and he'll just, pay it back as a loan with interest.
In my opinion, he risks going to jail.
Really?
He's not you signed when you use that money, you agreed you're going to use it for payroll, for rent, for utilities, and for interest expense if you own your property. That's what you agreed to use the money for. Many of people are putting it in separate bank accounts to track for that. if you're planning to use the money to build some software or remodel your restaurants and not bring your people back, you risk going to jail.
Okay, that answers that question.
That's just I mean,
No.
I've seen people go through prosecution for SBA fraud, whether it's fraud or not. And even if you don't land up in jail, they're going to make your life miserable for a long time, and your legal bills and your hassle and your aggravation or your audit bills are going to be more than what you tried to save. So I think that there's like a herd mentality now of everyone trying to figure out how to take most advantage of their PPP forgiveness. I think people need to move on and start and use the PPP for the intent of the law and start focusing and thinking about what to do next with their businesses, using programs like Main Street, which is coming up, to reinforce their balance sheet so they have liquidity to grow and expand. But I think PPP is not the entrepreneur protection program, it's paycheck protection program. And if you don't use it that way, you run getting into trouble.
Let me throw another question at you. This one comes from Dana White. She is a regular guest on the 21 Hats podcast, so I know her well. She owns a chain of hair salons in Detroit, so she's kind of in the same position in that she has a business that can't be open right now. Her question is, are there any loan programs proposed by the SBA that would include consolidating current debt and payroll assistance, pandemic assistance? She says, I'm concerned about taking out more loans between what I currently have and the PPP. It seems as if it would be a good idea considering the low interest rate.
So Dana, that's a two-part answer. I think we're still in the first chapter of the story. And secondly, I invite you to a webinar I'll be doing at 11 a.m. Eastern tomorrow on the Main Street Lending Program, where a lot of those rules are new as of this morning. So I can't give you the specifics about them. I just haven't had the time to read them and process them all in my mind yet. But if you go to multifunding.com, you go up on our site to free information, there's a link to webinars. And if you want to join in at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning, we'll be talking all about the Main Street Lending Program.
Give us a hint now. That program has not gotten the attention that it probably should have. I'm not sure why that is. What should we know about it? What type of business should be thinking about it?
First of all, you had to be doing well last year. You had a positive EBITDA last year at a bare minimum of at least $125,000, but probably a lot more. The loan facilities go from $500,000 to $150 million. These are not forgivable. They are loans, but they provide a mechanism to live to fight another day. What I'm trying to encourage business owners and entrepreneurs to think about now is, whether we like it or not, many of our dreams, many of our plans, much of our life's work got shattered or temporarily shattered through all this. And a lot of people, understandably now, are focused on survival instincts, right? How to maximize my PPP, how to maximize my forgiveness, how to cut my costs. People are hoarding cash, and I get all that. It's totally understandable. At the same time, we are going to reopen, and some of our businesses are going to be very different, some negatively, some positively. Ari's business is going to be very different for a long time. The haircutter's business is going to be very different for a long time. Some businesses are in industries that are booming because of this. Some businesses have to reinvent themselves 5%. Some of them have to reinvent themselves 50%. So we're entering whether none of us have wanted this or intended it, but we're entering a new battlefield. And when you go into a battle, you want to have a great team, you want to have a strategy, and have to reimagine and thought through how you're going to reinvent your business. And you want to have as much ammunition as possible, and ammunition equals cash. Okay. And the Main Street Lending Program gives businesses, at least that were in good shape last year, the opportunity to increase their ammunition.
Ari, have you looked at the Main Street Lending Program?
No, but I'm going to go on at 11 tomorrow and learn about it.
Good
I'm sorry,
answer.
guys. I'm not trying to be evasive about it, but I've been
You're
teaching
not.
about it for 2 weeks, and literally at 11 o'clock this morning, the feds released 3 new term sheets and 56 pages of new guidelines about it, which we expected, just like the PPP had evolved over time. And I'm not trying to tease anyone. I just don't feel comfortable to
Yeah.
speak intelligently about the new program until I've really had a chance to study it.
Ami, I don't know if you're reading the comments in the chat box, but your friend Jay Goltz pointed out that the pillow behind you that says "relax" doesn't seem to be working, which Ari
Oh,
commented.
Jay,
he
I'm
found
going to show
hard.
you just for that, Jay, because to show you how much I'm relaxing, I'm going to show you in my virtual background what I did to the dinner I tried to cook 2 nights ago. Are you ready? There.
Wow.
We do have mail order going.
Thank you very much. Can I take that down now?
I don't. Jay just said he's not relaxing. I'm kind of curious. I don't know what Jay is thinking. I don't know why he wouldn't want to know this information. It seems to me that they're probably, there are more than a few people out there who are wondering what use they can put a PPP loan to, and I think they ought to hear what you have to say about it now, not 3 years from now. But I want to talk a little bit about the other side of this, which is the process of trying to get past this and begin reopening. There's tremendous debate across this country right now. We have one state, Georgia, which is basically throwing open the doors and completely moving forward. Ari, let me start with you. What's your attitude about that? What are you thinking in terms of trying to move forward and, I'm not going to say get back to normal, but get back to something approaching normal?
Well, I mean, I guess what I'll say is normal's an illusion that never existed. It's just something we tell ourselves so we could sleep better at night. But things are always changing. This is just a particularly drastic and unexpectedly sudden change that's thrown, as Ami said, all of us for a loop. And there's some industries that are going to be helped. If you own stock in Zoom, it's probably a good move. Restaurants, hotels are probably even worse situation than restaurants because, they're, from talking to friends who are in leadership roles, they're under 10% occupancy. But, I didn't go to med school. I don't know if your grandmother wanted you to go to med school. Mine certainly did. So if I might have become an epidemiologist, in which case I'd be able to contribute something intelligent to that end of the conversation. But the reality is I have no expertise in how to handle pandemics. So I'm going with what the experts say. And
but which experts? Because there's a lot of, you hear politicians saying one thing, hear experts say another thing.
No, I said experts.
But you may be put in a difficult situation where, in Georgia, if you were in Georgia right now, you would have to be moving toward opening up, regardless of what the experts say. I don't know that that's going to happen in Michigan, but at some point.
Well, we seem to be in a different position. Governor Whitmer, I don't envy anybody that's in those roles right now. They're trying to figure it out and they don't know what to do either. She seems to be moving more cautiously, which seems to me to make some sense. I've read about the Swedish approach, but I don't have expertise. I'm just trying to we're all trying to do the right thing. The reality is at some point they will let us open the dining rooms again, at which point, to Ami's point made earlier, we're going to need to make a lot of changes, and we've already started listing what those are.
Give us a hint. What do you see here?
Well, there's all the obvious things. People are going to have to wear face masks. Clearly they're going to have to wear gloves, although I don't really know why wearing gloves or having clean hands is really any different, but it gives people the belief that there's something with the gloves. UV wands to sanitize. Do we have to build walls between booths in a restaurant, keeping people separated so that we're only seating somewhere between a quarter and half, of the space to begin with? Can we set up more tables outside where fresh air moves and people can be spread out more? All of that sort of stuff. And then some things we've adapted quickly to changing. So like at the Roadhouse, we started doing delivery, which we hadn't done. And we'll probably just keep going with that. So there's all of those things. And, like always, we all need to adapt to the marketplace and then do what's true to our values. And to Ami's point, not completely get pulled into panic, reaction, but try to stay grounded to who we are and where we're going in the long term, and it's true to our values, and still be able to make it work in the marketplace.
Have you thought at all about how you would handle something like employees who, when you are first allowed to reopen, say they're not comfortable coming in and working in that environment?
Well, forgetting what Ami said about me going to jail for letting them not come to work for the moment. No, I mean, if people don't want to work, I don't want them to work. I mean, it's really their call. I mean, forgetting the PPP legalities. Thanks for turning the pillow over. Forgetting the PPP legality question, which is clearly not my expertise either. It makes no sense. But at that point,
but it's not completely their call, because they could be in a position of, it's a financial decision if they.
But they can choose to go on unemployment.
Well, can they? If you offer them the opportunity to come back, in some states, they would not be able to stay on unemployment.
Well, I think no one really knows. I think that how the unemployment office in each state chooses to respond to the inquiries is different. The employer never controls what the unemployment office decides. That's an illusion. Sometimes you can check the box that you had hours and people get it. We have people who justifiably should be getting it, but just haven't gotten a check, for 6 weeks. In that setting, it's the opposite. So I think they have to make a decision. Then we just need to be honest on how we fill out the forms. I don't want to go to jail for that either. And if we had hours, we just say we had hours, and then how it goes from there is between them and the unemployment office. I mean, the challenge is that there's going to be a lot of unemployment. The restaurant world, just being the one I'm most familiar with, the food world, I mean, generally, if we're at half of our sales from a year ago, probably would be okay. Maybe it'll be a little better, but that means roughly after the PPP, you're going to have 50% of the people working roughly, right? So that's a lot of people out of work. And ironically, in our situation, you've gone from, until February, you have people going crazy trying to find employees, and pay rates, which doesn't bother me, but pay rates going up and up and up. They're still not high by the world standards in other industries, but pay rates going up and up and up. And now we're going to have swung, once the PPP thing is over, we're going to have swung down to, half of the employment in our industry, probably.
Are you concerned about your business model continuing to work in restaurants where you clearly won't be able to serve as many people, even if, assuming the demand is there?
Well, like you, I come from a Jewish family and was raised to worry. So now I'm worried about.
Let's leave my parents out of this, okay?
I'm worried about what Ami said. I might be going to jail for that. Or the other side is they're telling me if I pay people to stay home, I'm going to jail for that. So I kind of want to just send the whole money back and be done with it. Yeah, I mean, we need to be concerned about that. I mean, it's legit. That said, I mean, there's, if you can adjust your overheads to fit the newer sales level, which means people, like me, making less money because we set a salary based on a certain volume level and whatever, we need to be ready to make those adjustments. I mean, I think at some point there's going to be a vaccine. At some point there's going to be a cure. I have to believe that. I don't have to, but I do believe it. At which point I'm not going to again say going back to normal, because it is what it is, but things will return to a setting in which you can seat at a higher level, but that might easily be a year away, maybe more. I don't know. So we've got to find ways to maintain financial viability and quality of product and quality of service that help feed that to make it work.
Ami, Kassar, your focus, of course, is on the lending aspect of what's going on right now. But you touch so many of these businesses. You have, I'm sure, in many cases, emotional conversations with the people getting these loans. Do you have a sense? How are they looking at returning to business?
I think it's important that we move away from the PPP conversation and into this conversation, because in a few months, the PPP is going to be a blip on the radar screen. And we all have to take the time to reimagine our businesses with different scenarios in mind. If you have a restaurant like Ari and the world, we find a vaccine or some cure, real testing in a few months, and the world is basically back to normal in a few months, fantastic. But what if this goes on for a year or 18 months? Every business needs to, in my opinion, take the time now to think and strategize about what's next. Some of them, for some businesses, it might be a 5% tweak. For some businesses, it might be a 95% tweak or something in the middle. But if we want to have the opportunity to live to fight another day, we have to take this time now while we're at home and while we're insulated to really reimagine what it is we might need to become in the future. And there's a lot of gray in that. And it's not clear. There's different scenarios for different people about how to think about that. Live events, are live events going to go on, right? I spend most of my life running around the country speaking. Is there going to be another speaking event for me in the next 12 months? What am I going to do about that? How am I going to engage with people online? That's me. You know, some people have businesses where some lines are booming and some lines are devastated. How are you going to diversify yourself? What are you going to plan? Do you need to think about new products?
I mean, let me stop you there. You've done a trial run on doing these instead of going to events, doing it from your home. Are you learning from this? Is it possible
Totally.
that you will
Totally.
stop traveling because this works better?
We'll see. I used to hate, I think we've talked about this, Lauren. I hate webinars. I've given more webinars in the last 8 weeks than I have in my entire life. Okay. And it's worked quite effectively. So that's just one little example for me. But we all have to kind of take the time and start to reimagine and think about what it is we want our business to become in a post-COVID world, and to have different variables for that. And because, you know, things have shifted, and whether it's going to take 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, or 12 months for everything to get back to normal, there's been a fundamental shift right under our noses, and none of us anticipated it. I used to, in my talks, like joke about speed bumps. And I used to make a joke, you know, you're trying to encourage people always to have a nice line of credit. Saying we're going to wake up one morning and we learned we blew up Iran or we blew up North Korea, and everyone would look, who would have dreamed 3 months ago we're going to wake up today and America was shut down?
Yep.
Right. And why I want people to think about this Main Street lending program is usually when the shit hits the fan. Sorry, am I allowed to say that here, Lauren?
You did. It's okay.
Okay. Usually when the shit hits the fan for a company, they don't have a chance to rebuild their balance sheets, or they don't have programs or instruments to get cash. They have to go to hard money lenders, or their banks down their throat, or they have to raise equity and stuff like this. And here with some of these programs like the Main Street program is an opportunity for companies to rebuild their balance sheets and get some extra cash. And which is like increasing your ammunition for the war. And I think that's something that people need to think about. We need to get out of this herd mentality conversation about the PPP, and we need to start thinking about what's next.
Ari, have you been reimagining your business? You know, aside from thinking about just how you reopen and when, have you used this time? You guys are famous for your long-term visioning. Have you taken this opportunity to think about lessons that might be learned and changes that might be made?
Well, yeah, I mean, but it's not like I wasn't doing that on March 9th either. I agree with what Ami's saying. I mean, everything needs to change, but that said, everything always needs to change. That's what continuous improvement is. And so this is a little more extreme, but it's the reality. Open book management, which we are, means you're looking at the numbers and you're making adjustments all the time. To answer your question about the visioning, so we, ironically or not, our last, the previous long-term vision that we wrote was written in '07 for 2020. We've spent the last 18 months, not exclusively, but working on the next vision, which
Did
is
you
for
predict the pandemic
2032.
in '07?
No, we did not
No.
predict the pandemic. No.
You missed it.
So well, the vision is not a prediction. It's not intended to be. It's a statement of where you want to go, as you already know. But and so we pretty much had finished our 2032 vision, and ironically, we're supposed to basically make a formal staff rollout of it, even though they've all seen the drafts the week after everything. Now that Ami swore went to shit. So
Thank you.
I guess I can swear up a storm. My feeling is that we wouldn't change the 2032 vision because it doesn't really talk about particular product lines or whatever. It talks about how we work together. It talks about focusing more on teaching our methodologies to young people. It talks about operating more in harmony with nature. It talks about bringing love more overtly into the organization. It talks about financial health. And none of those are really going to be any different. If we're wearing face shields or spacesuits, those all still apply. So I think on the long term, we're still clear on our guiding principles. We're still clear. We're working on a statement of beliefs, which came out of the work, our learnings that came from the part 4 of the Zingerman's Guide to Good Leading series, which is about beliefs. All of that's going to stay the same. It's really more the short term, what products don't work in this setting. Do we add delivery? Do we not do delivery? Do we, how do we reduce staff to fit sales levels and make sure that we're financially viable? Are there investments to make in product lines that weren't working before that work better now? All of that needs to happen, and the conversations are happening. I don't know what the outcomes will be, and some of it'll be right and some of it'll be wrong, and we'll adjust again.
Interesting. Do you think has this crisis changed your thinking about being an open book company? Has the fact that your employees are, know the numbers and are aware of where the business is headed, is that something that you found particularly useful at a time like this?
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
It's very useful. I mean, what would be the point of hiding it from them? If you hide it from them, they make up stories. And, the press, with all due respect,
Careful.
It's a generalization, so I'm not talking about you, but the average person writing an article doesn't understand how business works, right?
Ouch.
And so, well, they don't. I mean, they're not business writers. And so they're looking at sales levels, assuming sales levels correlate with profitability, which the three of us and everybody on this call knows they don't always. They're assuming that what is applicable to Amazon is applicable to every other business in the country, which is silly. And so you have, grocery stores that are booming in sales, perhaps, and you have Amazon, which is booming, and they're paying people more money. Then you have our restaurants, which are losing money. The risk to the employee is the same. I want to pay them more money. We don't have more money. What do we do? And so when you're open book and people understand those complexities, it changes their perspective on how things are being handled. They don't look at you like the magical parent that's just going to fork over money that they salted away somewhere in the back room. They know what the balance sheet is. They know what the cash status is, et cetera. So they're making decisions and voicing opinions much more as leaders and informed people.
Did they come to you with suggestions and solutions to your situation when this all hit?
Yeah. I mean, it's not like I have to figure it out. I mean, the whole company needs to figure it out. And, when you're open book, you end up with, in my belief, is mostly people who are driving to get sales. The delivery program I mentioned at the Roadhouse was created by an assistant manager who's, got out front of this before the dining room shut down, and she had drafted up a plan for doing our own delivery, so absolutely people are all working on it across the organization. The deli's got a thing now, the Roadhouse and others are setting it up too. But one of the best ways to help make things viable is looking for customers who want to support us to be able to purchase food that goes to the hospitals, to the healthcare workers on the front lines. So that way it's not a donation to a business, which doesn't really make sense. They're buying food. It helps us bring in sales. It helps us keep legit employment hours up, and then it gets food, nutritious food, to people in the hospitals who are working a lot of hours. So that's kind of a win-win-win creative solution.
Ami, has this presented management challenges to you dealing with your staff? Have you worked? Do you have people who've worked remotely prior to this? Ami Kassar?
I feel blessed and fortunate to have a cohesive team with the same values. And so I think we've adapted beautifully over the last 6 to 8 weeks because we're totally cool and comfortable with who we are as a company. And we're small enough that we can still act like a family. And so I feel that has all been a real lesson. And I can't imagine what bigger companies that are more political and have bigger infrastructures have been going through in trying to manage remotely. I think it's got to be much more difficult. We had interesting challenges at the beginning when we were considering really getting involved in this PPP thing, and we were thinking through how we were going to maybe have to triple, quadruple, or take our team times 10, and how we were going to do that remotely, and how we were going to train, and how we were going to teach, and how we were going to keep, quality and consistency. And we were debating and discussing all those things. And then we just decided to stay true to who we are and not do that.
I'm not sure I follow. What is it that you decided not to do?
We were debating at first if we were going to get involved in brokering PPP loans.
Oh, I see.
And do that, we would have suddenly, what was fascinating about us.
Is that even possible or legal?
No, it is technically possible.
Are people doing that?
Some very,
He's
very
going to go to jail.
Very, very poor, very, very poorly. So we were debating literally. I went from, we went suddenly from, I don't know, maybe getting 200 emails a day to getting like 3,000 emails a day.
Wow.
And just literally, every single person who I've met or spoken to or heard me speak over the last 5 years who said, "Oh, that was interesting," and ignored what I said, suddenly, I became their best friend. and getting texts, this and that, and this one's uncle and that one's aunt, and this one, and so we had to figure out pretty quickly how to control that. And it was hard because we're used to getting back to everyone and not having mass systems, and being patient and kind and taking time to talk through with everyone. It was humanly impossible. So we got to the point where we said, we're doing these webinars and come here to get your questions answered, and we just don't have the time to answer each of your questions one-on-one. And that's how we did it.
Got it. We do have a question that came in from somebody asking for more information about the Main Street Lending Program. You have posted a link in the chat box for a webinar that you're hosting tomorrow at 11 o'clock, by which time you expect to know the rules inside and out, I think you said.
Called an Aminar now.
Wow. You have gotten serious about this. Just remind us, your webinar is tomorrow at 11 o'clock. The link is right there.
Eastern time, and I think I put the link in there.
Yeah, you did.
Up in the chat, whoever wants to come, or if you can't get that for some reason, you want to go to multifunding.com and go to the free information up on top. There'll be links to it.
And Ari, I don't know if you saw it, but Jay Goltz put in a solution.
I did. I thought that was very creative.
He suggests that you guys hire a bunch of lawyers and let them make the decisions, and then they can go to jail.
Yeah, Jay is nothing if not creative and entertaining.
Well, here's the thing, and what I would say to Jay, and we can agree to disagree, but here's my take on it. This is PPP is a political issue. Okay, and people are going to be fighting and angry about it for years. Just like they were fighting and angry about many of the bailouts in the big, 10
They're
years
still
ago.
fighting about those.
They're still fighting about that. And Republicans are going to be taking heat from Democrats, saying all your big friends, your big wealthy friends got all this forgivable money, and it was all a con. And none of the little guys, not nearly enough of the little guys got the money, and the program did nothing to protect small business. Even though that's not actually the intent of the program. The program is, EIDL is designed to protect small businesses, not the PPP. And so I believe when you're in the middle of such a hot political potato, that is more reason than ever, especially for people with recognizable brands or bigger names, to be extremely careful. And no matter what your lawyers tell you, I believe you're better off erring on the side of caution than being, because I just think that some companies are going to get picked out, and some companies are going to be poster childs, and some people's lives, I don't know whose, are going to be made miserable, even if the laws aren't clear.
Yeah, Ami, I don't want you to restate everything because I heard it, but I'm just like what we're doing in part is what we've done because we're hearing aggressively the other way, that if we put people on payroll that aren't doing anything, then we're vulnerable. And this is the conservative, cautious approach. So I hear what you're saying, and I'm taking it to heart and will convey it to others, but it's just funny to be caught in the middle of two people saying each is the cautious approach, and you could go to jail for A or B, but now you got to figure out what to do.
Totally, everyone's going to make their own decision, and I could be wrong.
I'm sure you've heard that from other people who say exactly what Ari just said he's heard, that some people think, the opposite of what you're saying is the cautious approach. What do you say directly to that?
It is for protecting your business from a business strategy perspective. Absolutely. Why should I hire people and pay them money to sit there and do nothing when I don't know what's going to be happening in 2 months? I totally get that.
But I think Ari was saying that he
No, that's not the argument. The argument is that you're vulnerable because you made up fake work for people, and that you paid them to stay home and sew masks, and that's bullshit work, and that you're going to be in trouble because I'm not trying to argue it out here. I claim no expertise. I'm just trying to listen to people who know more than me, and I'm just listening to you and then listening to the other side and hearing two completely opposite approaches, both of which are warning of the same outcome. That's all.
I just want to
appreciating the irony.
Just to see what Jay's saying there, he's right. And I'll say it again. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not giving legal advice. I'm not acting as anyone's attorney here. I'm just giving you my opinion of what I think is happening in the landscape. Everyone has to decide for themselves what they're going to do here. And maybe I'm not an expert on unemployment law either. But I'm just reacting to the political environment.
I think we have to wrap this up. Unfortunately, I could talk to you guys all day. Ami, I think you're raising really important issues. And as I said before, I think it's a really good idea to think this through now, be aware of an opinion that you're offering now rather than hearing it for the first time 3 years from now. So thank you for sharing that. Actually, my thanks to both Ari Weinzweig of Zingerman's and Ami Kassar of Multifunding. This has been a great conversation. Really appreciate your taking the time. And thanks to everybody who joined the webinar, especially those who contributed their questions. We'll be back next week with another one. Everybody, please be careful out there. Stay safe.
Be well, guys. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Ami, thank you so much. Lauren, thank you so much.
Nice
Thank
to meet
you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
See you.